Namaste. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let us do this today. I would like to suggest to you that if you have the interest and the will to do so, let me suggest a few verses that you may want to learn by memory, so you don't have to really look at the text anymore. It'll be difficult to do all the 31 verses that we have done, but let me suggest to you the key verses that you may want to do in order to remember them by heart. And so those would be number 1, because that starts the text and in fact starts the whole process of learning. Number 1. Then the number 5, and the number 5 is important because it talks about the Atma itself, the you and I, our reality, how it starts with that, number 5. Then we can go to straight away to number 20, which we have been chanting, which brings the reality out in the open with a complete review of the whole world, not just myself. So needs some explanation. So number 20. Then what I would think we should do is remember 30 and 31. So here we have number 1, number 5, number 20, number 30, and number 31. So these are the 5 verses that I think I suggest that we remember, and let's actually chant them right now so that we can, and we will do maybe chant each verse twice, so that we have a sense of the pronunciation and so on, which you know about it already, but let's do that today as a group. Okay, so number 1. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik tadrishyam driktu manasam drishyadhi vrittaya sakshi drigeva natu drishyate. Once again. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik tadrishyam driktu manasam drishyadhi vrittaya sakshi drigeva natu drishyate. And number 5. Nodeti nastametyesha na vriddhim yati nakshayam swayam vibhatyatha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. Nodeti nastametyesha na vriddhim yati nakshayam swayam vibhatyatha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. Then number 20. Asti bhati priyam rupam nama chetyam shapanchakam adyatrayam brahma rupam jagat rupam tatodvayam. Asti bhati priyam rupam nama chetyam shapanchakam adyatrayam brahma rupam jagat rupam tatodvayam. Then number 30 and 31. Dehabhimane galite vigyate paramatmani Yatra yatra mano yati tatra tatra samadhayaha. Deha bimane galite vigyate paramatmani. Yatra yatra mano yati tatra tatra samadhayaha. Number 31. Bhidyate hridaya granthi chidyante sarva samshayaha kshiyante chasya karmani tasmin drishte paravare. Bhidyate hridaya granthi chidyante sarva samshayaha kshiyante chasya karmani tasmin drishte paravare. Okay. So those are the 5 verses. So I think maybe our sense of this from this point on, as you know, we have talked about this, is a revision. And so there is very little new information created, but a revision is important. And a revision should not be looked upon as a repetition. There's a difference between repetition and revision. So in terms of chanting, when you want to firm up your sense of memory, repetition is important. So there the repetition is important. But in terms of understanding, repetition is not necessary. In fact, doesn't play any part at all. But a revision plays a part. It plays a part. And I have learned in my own life, I just tell you my experience, you can do whatever you want to, that if I revise something, then it makes it a lot clearer in my mind. That's been my experience. So even when I study some passages, I usually do in the morning. I just finished doing something and now I'm doing Ishavasya Upanishad, a revising of that. So if I study a text in the morning, and then let's say I study for an hour, and then I don't take up anything for the rest of the day, I come back the next day, then a quick understanding of a revision of the understanding of the previous day is very useful. You think that you understand it, but until you go through it one more time, you realize your clarity was not there. Anyway, so repetition is not important, but a revision is important. So let's look at the whole section of Drg Drsya Viveka from now on as a revision, not as a repetition. That being the case, very quickly, the revision of these verses that we are doing. So the first verse is Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drik. There it says that, listen, you need to have certain ways of seeing things as a seen as well as a seer. So the seen and seer are a basic distinction. In fact, we will do a meditation on this very fact today, after we are done with a little bit of this revision. Then I think, as I promised to you last time, we will begin to have a series of meditations, and we will do one today itself. And this meditation today is going to be the basic distinction between seer and seen. So that was already pointed out in the first verse, number 1. Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drik, etc. Alright. Then, in number 5, the verse says that there is something special about your consciousness. Something very special. It is not like your eyes, and it is not like your mind, because the eyes also have an important function, because they act as a seer. Your ears act as a seer in the sense of not seeing through the eyes, but in terms of being the organ that can distinguish the various sounds. So in that sense, a kind of like a seer, hearer. So the eyes and the ears and the sense of touch and so on all act as a drik. Drik means the one is not an object, it is the subject. They all act as that. But they act in duality. Duality meaning at one time they are the seer, the very next moment, or in fact the very same moment, they are also the seen. And so the eyes are the seer, and the forms that you see are the seen. But the eyes are not always the seer. They actually become the seen themselves. How? Because you can rub your eyes and you know your eyes here, or you can say, my eyes are not seeing very well these days. So as such they become the seen. So now they have a duality with two different functions. One is a seer and one is a seen. What that means is their nature is not the seen, but they behave as though they are the seer. Their nature is not the seer, but they behave as though they are the seer. Because if their nature was the seer, then they will never change to become a seen, but they do. So that just means, just like, we have given this example, that water may be very hot. It can scald you, and it can really kill you. But the water is not hot by itself. It has a duality of its nature. It can be cold, it can be warm, it can be hot, it can be anything. Why? Because the heat of the water is not its own, it is borrowed. So similarly here also our eyes and our ears and our mind and everything else, they appear to be conscious. Because you can open your eyes and you can close your eyes and you can say, yes, my eyes are seeing this. So they are conscious, all right, but the consciousness of the eye is not its own. It is borrowed. So this is what the very first verse pointed out. Very beautiful. Then it takes you through this methodology, that the eyes are the seer and the forms are the seen, but the eyes themselves become the seen, and then the mind is the seer, and then the mind also is not the absolute seer, it is also becomes the seen, and then your consciousness becomes the seer, and so there is a kind of a gradation of this seer-seen relationship. But then it appears that then something should also be the seer of your consciousness. No. This is where the buck stops, and the consciousness doesn't need any evidence. It is self-evident. It doesn't need anyone else to look at it, because, for example, for you to see something, you need light. For the light to be there, you need the light of the sun. For the sun to be shining, it doesn't need anything. It just shines by itself. And so, really speaking, now there is something unique about the consciousness. It is not like the eyes, it is not like the mind, it is not like buddhi, it doesn't look anything else. It is really by itself. That is pointed out in the first verse itself. And so, Drishyaha dhivrittayaha sakshi drigevatu natu drishyate. The sakshi, the consciousness, the sakshi, the witness, is never witnessed. It is always the witnesser. It is never witnessed. This is the unique part about the Atma that we have to really distinguish and see. And now in verse number 5, it details out the nature of the Sakshi. It says, na udeti. It never begins. It never ends. And never changes. And doesn't need any external aid to be itself. Swayam vibhati atha anyani bhasayeti sadhanam vina bhasayet. So here, following up the initial introduction of the verse number 1, where you said Sakshi is different. And see the distinction between everything else in the world and the Sakshi. And then it says, okay, now that you are aware of the distinction between everything else and the Sakshi, here is what the Sakshi is. This is given in verse number 5. And we have various other verses after that. Then we come to verse number 20. And in number 20, the Sakshi is now elevated to the seer of the entire world. And so now it is the word Brahman is used. And so the Brahman is used. So here there's a lot of implications of that, which means that there is only one Sakshi in the whole world. It is not you as a personal Sakshi. See, right now our view is that I understand what Vedanta is saying. Yes, I'm following Rupam, Dishyam, etc. And so I becomes the Sakshi. And I become the Sakshi means what? Somehow you feel that I am here sitting in this room at this moment and I am the Sakshi. Yes, I can see that. But what I don't see is that this is the same Sakshi that is there in the whole world. If you are a Sakshi, you are not a Sakshi who is different from me as a Sakshi. Your personality may all be different than mine, and it is. We are not all the same personality. But we are the same person. That's the Sakshi. That is what is called Brahman. So the individual Sakshi and the total Sakshi is one and the same. This is pointed out in verse number 20. Asti bhati priyam rupam Nama chaiti ansha panchakam adyatrayam brahma rupam tato dvaya jagat rupam tato dvayam. So he says, now if you analyze the components of anything in the whole world, just dissect it. You know, just like you are a biology student. I remember it was when I was growing up in Amritsar, and then usually happens exactly the same thing is happening with my granddaughters, who are now 15 and almost 13 and a half and 15. And now we talk to them. Now the topic is, what are your interests in becoming in life? And so we keep talking to them, and so it's very interesting. Every day we say, our older one is called Arya, we say Arya. Just the other day we were talking to Arya, and it's Arya, she's in high school now, so she has 3 more years after this, and then she goes to college. So you're saying, Arya, what are your interests? What do you want to become? And she is talking about, she says, I'm interested in psychology. Well, that's interesting, interested in psychology. So similarly, when I was at that age, my parents and my grandparents, I used to live with my grandparents because my parents were far away in the coal mines of India. So anyway, I will meet them, but I was living with my grandparents. So they will all ask me, so what do you want to become? And in India, this is interesting. You are not given that much freedom to be what you want to be. That's much more decided for you. And so for men and for women, people have some ideas already in. So in my case, if you look at your friends, they will say, well, I can be a doctor. You want to be an educated person, you're a professional person. Or I can be an engineer, or I can be a lawyer, I can be like that. So one thing which was ruled out for me is to becoming a doctor. Because I had so many medical problems of my own that they said, for you to be in some kind of a laboratory who are dissecting things, you are not going to be able to do all of this. And they were right. They were right. So they decided that I should be an engineer and an electronic engineer, so that I'm protected from the environment. I'm not a civil engineer building bridges. Anyway, so that was the whole thing. I was talking about dissecting. So if a biology student is dissecting, what they will be told is, look at this, whatever thing they're dissecting. Let's say they're dissecting some frogs. So you dissect a frog, and then the teacher has to say, look, if you look at through the microscope, or I don't know how they do this, you'll see that it has a heart beating right here. And then they will go to some other frog and they will say, whichever frog is there, please see by dissecting it, it has a heart. So the conclusion is that all frogs have hearts. All frogs have eyes. They all have kidney or something. I don't know whether frogs have kidneys or not. I have no idea. But anyway, the point is that you look at the commonality of each frog is different. And so this is exactly what happens to us. When we look at each other, we all look very different to each other. Well, somebody is a man, somebody is a woman, somebody is white, somebody is brown, somebody is black. And so we're looking at the differences. Do you know that the differences that we are looking at are 0.0001% and 99.9999% are all the same. All the same. Not as though we share some parts. No. Good heavens, all the human beings, the moment you're a human being, they're 99%, but we are only looking at the differences. So this is what it is saying is that Asti bhati priyam rupam nama chaiti ancha panchakam. Asti bhati priyam is common to everything in this whole world. Not just human beings, not only frogs, but everything. And so that is the common element. And then there are some differences, which is nama and rupa. Nama rupa are different, those are incidental, but the intrinsic part is asti bhati priyam, and that is the Brahma Rupam. And that is the Sakshi that we talked about earlier. It's the same thing. Anyway, so that is number 21. Then, so the Drg Drsya Viveka takes the approach of starting with an analysis of yourself. Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drik. He says, look at your own eyes and the forms that you see. Start your analysis right there. Then expand it to see whether the same thing occurs everywhere or not. Because to see the unity in this whole diversity, you have to now identify and dissect the unity in all the diversity. You have to intelligently look at whether it is there or not. It's not a make-believe, it's a fact. And so you have to look at it, examine it, analyze it. So you look at all of that, and you find, my goodness, there is in fact Brahman as the only thing left in the whole world. Everything else, all differences are all gone. And then you see that it is there. So the Drg Drsya Viveka goes through this whole analysis. And then it says, how come I don't see it? How come I don't, why is it that I don't see it? In spite of the fact it's been pointed out to me and I'm still not able to see it. Is it something wrong with this picture? Or is something wrong with me? What do I need to do? I mean, I understand that what you're saying is true, but I don't see it that way. So there, the reconciliation of what is being said and your own experiences are pointed out, slowly leading to a sense of meditation. And the meditation in the beginning is what I would say contrived. Contrived means that you have to create a special situation where this meditation becomes possible. Because otherwise your mind is going haywire in different directions. And so you have to kind of have a crucible where you are absorbed in doing this meditation. All right, then what happens is that you may be able to see this fact at least partially, but definitely be able to see this in a contrived environment. But to be able to see it in every other environment, it requires more patience and more skill and more persistence. then it will happen is that even though you are looking at diversity, you are much more cognizant of the unity in the diversity. And your mind is much more focused. You see, this is very usual, it's a good example to use, which says that as a casual observer of golden ornaments, it is very possible that your mind is tied up in appreciating the beauty of the ornament. Wow, what a nice earring, or a ring or something. What a beautiful shape. I wonder who made it. All those kinds of things are involved in the appreciating of the ornament. But suppose your family belongs to the family of jewelers. And as that often happens, it happens quite often, that the jewelers who are very good and therefore very successful in their business, and they have some children. The children are not sure what they want to do, so the father and mother says, wait, there's a lot of money to be made in jewelry. Why don't you become a jeweler? So first of all, you want to be different from your parents, all those kinds of things. But finally you said, you know what, I think you've got a good suggestion. I think I want to be a jeweler. I see how much money you're making, all the cars you're driving and so on. I want to be one of those. I want to be a jeweler. So he goes to the shop. So his father says, okay, from now on you come to the shop and I will train you how to be a good jeweler. So he walks in and he says, wow, what a nice set of earrings. He says, don't look at the earrings. Look at the gold that it is made out of. Why? Because you need to become an expert in the gold, not in the ornamentation. The ornamentation is a very small part of our business. The big part of the business is, where do you get the gold from? How do you melt it? How do you preserve the shine of the gold? How do you change it? How do you preserve it? Be conscious of the gold. And at first the students say, oh my gosh, this is boring. But then the real value is in the gold, not in the ornament. And so after a while, the boring training sessions become less boring and it becomes more useful. And at one time, this youngster, now when it becomes the owner of the shop and the parents have become aged, and now he or she becomes the real jeweler, their vision is always on the gold. How many carats, the purity of it, how to make it, etc. So that means no matter what the ornamentation there is, their drishti, their vision is always to the underlying content of it. This is what is meant by yatra yatra mano yati tatra tatra samadhaya. What it means is that no matter who you're dealing with, even if you're dealing with someone who is unpleasant, who disagrees with you, who you don't like even, there also your drishti should be, my goodness, what an interesting person. What an interesting person, because the makeup is the same as Atma. And yet the person is behaving as though he is not the Atma. Wow! Interesting. You look at some of the shenanigans going on in Washington. That should be our attitude. How could this happen? There are people who are totally unethical. Totally. As a separate topic, sometimes we will do that. But it just means that it's just amazing how dishonest they are. But it is like a gold jewelry that looks ugly. It's still made out of gold. So your thinking always is the common unity between the entire diversity at all times. And not forced. This isn't something you have to, but it is something that you are trained to do in recognizing the underlying Asti Bhati Priyam Brahman in everything. So that is pointed out in the terms of the direction that we have to take from understanding the fundamentals first, and then applying it all over the place, and then finally becoming much more comfortable with it. Yatra yatra manoyati. Wherever your mind goes, whatever you see, tatra tatra samadhaya. Samadhaya means the plural of samadhi. Samadhi means that your mind is totally absorbed. It takes a long time, a lot of skill, but there is no other way. This is the way to do that. Then, in a very short order, the results of this whole tapas, the very disciplinary thinking, and is not an easy thing to do. But if you are able to do this, the results of that are pointed out in verse number 31. And that verse is the result that, no one wants to do something unless it is very useful to me. And nothing is done until I am convinced this is something good for me. I don't want to just do things just for the sake of doing it. Oh, it would be nice to do. Oh, nice to do means what? What do you want to do? Oh, I don't know. You mean you are not interested? No, not interested. Nobody does that. Even if you're not doing anything, you say, why are you not doing anything? Yeah, because doing things don't really help me very much. I might as well not. That means you make a conscious choice of not doing anything. So that's also kind of like doing something. Anyway, so the results must be very clear to me. Why should I go through this very disciplinary process of Drg Drsya Viveka and all of this and sadhana? Because the results are phenomenal. You are totally free in this life itself, free of all problems. Nothing will bother you. Not even physical problems will bother you, let alone mental issues, health, relationships, friendship, money, nothing. Is that possible? This is what we are talking about. So the results are given in number 31. Bhidyate hridaya granthi. Because right now, at the moment, you are under the grip. The author says that whatever is happening to you, which is totally not connected to you, is happening to you. totally not connected means you have absolutely no touch to it, but yet you feel you're affected by it. Exactly like the example of the electricity and the appliance. The appliance is broken down, it doesn't matter. But right now you're thinking you are the appliance. You're unable to distinguish between yourself as the electricity and the appliance that applies the electricity. You cannot distinguish between them, which is understandable. Okay, totally in the beginning, yes. But see the distinction between them. If you do, you become free of anything that happens to the appliance. Vidyate hridaya granthi chidyante sarva samshaya. Means that all doubts about it are gone. And kshiyante chasya karmani means that all tendencies that you have to think in that direction are gone. Karma means that previous repetitions, excuse me, previous actions that were done that continue to impel you in a certain direction. Gone. All gone. You become totally free. Shriyante asya karmani tasmin drishte paravare. So this was the example of the fruits of this whole action. Okay? Maybe I've taken a bit too much of this time. So let us, as I promised, do some preliminary meditation. So we will keep it too short because we are already at 10:43. And but I think we should, almost like every session from now on, do some meditation. So let's do one today. I pray to Ishvara to grant me the ability to distinguish between what I am and what appears to be happening to me. I pray to Ishvara for the skill, the wisdom, and the ability for this distinction, Viveka, between I that never happens and non-I that appears to keep happening and keeps appearing to happen to me. May I see that I, the Sakshi, never changes. I am the same Sakshi that I was when I was very young. I am the same Sakshi when I appeared to be growing up. I am the same Sakshi just now. And I am the same Sakshi that will be any time in the future. This is the Atma. This is I. And I that has no beginning. moment I was born. And became aware of things, I was the I. I don't have any experience before I was born, so I cannot tell. But the Shastra says, even before you were born, you were the I, the consciousness. In the previous incarnation, I was still the same I. The I never begins. I am the same I now that I was then. I am the same I here as there. I am the same I in all three periods of time. I am the same I regardless of time, place, or situation. Distinct from that is what is happening to me. I see all of them, every one of them, without exception, having a beginning. Changes to them as they are happening. And their eventual dissolution into myself. The distinction between I and the not I becomes clear as I look into it. Things that are happening to me mostly are evident to me. If they are not evident, they will be. But I am self-evident. Things that are happening to me are evident to me. They depend on me to validate them, to remember them, not to remember them. But that validation is not necessary for me. I am forever self-validated. The non-self, the things that are happening to me, are always changes, are always changing. And they may cause joy to me, or just the opposite. They may cause problems. But that's not true for myself. I don't have any cause for unhappiness as I am. The only cause of unhappiness is the things that are happening to me. The entire spectrum of things that are happening to me is called Drsya. They are seen. They can be objectified. But I, the seer, is not objectifiable. Always the same. Self-evident. Unexpressed. I don't need to be expressed. am always unmanifest. Whatever is manifest, Drishya, the seen, is not me. I pray to Ishvara to give me the ability to distinguish between the seer and the seen. For Drg Drsya Viveka. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Satoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Jyotirgamaya. Good to see you all. Don't see any questions, but If you do have any observations or questions, you can always send me an email. I really enjoy getting your emails. Please do keep in touch, and I'll be happy to Sam, you had asked me about the karmas from the last class. So let me, since we have a few minutes, I will comment on that for your benefit and for others' benefit as well. So this discussion came up in the discussion of the verse number 31, Kshiyante chasya karmani. So that's how the discussion was. So what is shown here is that each individual has a huge history behind it. Huge. We are very much like a piece of huge ice floating in the ocean, where just a small portion is above the water visible and a huge portion underneath that is invisible. So as we go through our lives, and our lives have had no beginning, we've always been like this. So it's not as though, when did I begin? So this is called anadi. Anadi means there's absolutely no beginning at all. This has always been that way. So Ishvara also, this whole principle of anadi and beginning, and like for example, I will extend it even to say that the whole idea about the creation. When did this creation happen? How did this creation happen? Why did this creation happen? All of this is not valid to ask because it has always been like that. So the nature of the creation never began. So the whole world, whole cosmos is in the form of an everlasting change. So the only distinction is whether excuse me. So the only distinction they say is that if I know what is going on, I'm free. If I don't know what is going on, if I am not knowledgeable about the truth of all aspects of my life, then I keep searching. And the searching is in the form of, this is what is called in Bhagavad Gita also, avidya, kama and karma. So these are the three aspects of it. Search is in the form of not knowing that I'm already free. This is avidya. Then the desire to be free is kama. And then to do something about the desire is karma. And in the process of this whole thing, my life is over. Because I try all kinds of things and so on, and my body is growing older, and pretty soon body is not meant to live for 1,000 years, only for a few years, and then I die, my body dies. But my avidya, kama, karma remains in the whole process. That being the case, I am accumulating both different kind of karmas, some good, some bad. And they're all kept in my account somewhere in the cloud. This is the spiritual cloud, which is really the cloud. It's in the whole process. Somewhere Ishvara keeps it with huge memory. Never forgiven. never forgotten, always there. This is called sanchita karma. So sanchita karma means that, so chitta means which is chosen. So it is stored. You keep on storing different kinds of karmas in a huge storehouse which is in your and my name. This is called sanchita karma. Then from this sanchita karma comes some karmas that allow my expression in this life. So that is jointly decided between Ishvara and myself as to, okay, now this is what I want to do. Ishvara says, you sure? Say, yes, this is what I want to do. So the Ishvara then has to pick out the right kind of combination of karmas, some good karma, some bad karma, and gives you the ability to be born in a given set of situations with a given set of mother and father, in a given country, a different, all of those kinds of things. This is called, so out of the sanchita karma, a small amount of karma is taken out as an expression for you and I in this life. This is called prarabdha karma. So those karmas have now fructified. So this becomes Ishvara Sankalpa. So this agreement is already signed up by Ishvara and says, okay, done deal. Now this one has all the things written in there which will say how long I would live, how long am I likely to live. So the likely is important because I can make some changes to it through my ongoing karma. And so the ongoing karma is what is called agami karma. So you have a karma, you have a prarabdha karma, and then you can modify the prarabdha karma to a certain extent. The whole thing you cannot modify because that's already a done deal. In fact, it's no longer a karma, it is called phalam, as we saw last time. But adding to the phalam, you can add a little bit, some changes to it through what is called agami karma. Now those agami karmas and so on are stored back into the sanchita karma until the next life comes. So these are the three kinds of karmas: sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, and agami karma that constitute the realm of the karmas. So anyway, that's what... hopefully I have answered your question. If you have any more, then please write to me and I'll be happy to talk to you. Don't see any other questions, so with that, I take your leave. Okay, hopefully we'll see you next week. Om